So welcome to the Practice Management Study Club. Today's topic is how to conduct performance reviews. It is being presented by Sandy Balarjan, and we will begin the webinar shortly. And now it is my pleasure to introduce our NDX field contacts, Joanne Friedman and Devin Gillespie, both territory sales managers for Canada. Take it away, partners.
Jessica, it's my pleasure to introduce Sandy Balarjan. Sandy is a leading authority on how to increase the effectiveness of dental business systems. Sandy is the author of 3 textbooks, Dental Office Administration, first and second edition, published by Top Hat Publishers, and the Canadian Dental Office Administrator, published by Nelson Canada. She created the first certificate course in dental practice management at the University of Toronto, Faculty of Dentistry. Sandy has lectured at dental faculties across North America and has had articles published in many journals, including the Journal of the Canadian Dental Association, Oral Health, Spectrum Teamwork, and Just for Canadian Dentists, and many other publications. As owner-operator of Dental Office Consulting Services, Sandy specializes in dental practice management, consulting, hiring, coaching, and training dental teams, implementation of in-office programs, dental business, and operational plans. Sandy, take it away.
Thank you so much. Okay, welcome, and thank you for taking the time out to join this webinar this evening. I realize it's a busy time for everyone, but tonight we're going to be talking about how to conduct performance reviews, because this is such an important part of your HR system. Maintaining your dream team involves clarifying the expectations of the employer, as well as providing regular feedback to your employees. And I will tell you, all of the practices that I go into, although some employers may be reluctant to do performance reviews, the staff always talk to me, the team talks to me and tells me that they really want performance reviews. They need to know how they're doing. They need to know what the doctor is expecting. So this is a critical part of your HR infrastructure. Conducting regular performance reviews also provides your employees with a voice. So sometimes, well, all times during the day, it's very difficult to have a one-on-one conversation with your employees. So this may be the only time that you get to sit down with them and really listen to what their concerns are and also how they feel that they're doing. So we're going to talk about the system that will support you in doing this. So tonight we're going to talk about the importance of feedback and clarifying expectations to your employees, how conducting regular performance reviews can actually protect your practice, which is a really important thing to know, and how to conduct effective performance reviews. As you know, your most valuable resource, of course, in your practice is your human resource. So it's very important to recruit and hire carefully. We talked about this in one of our past webinars. Gave you an overview of the performance of the human resources system. But you need to have human resources management system in place that has measurable and time-bound goals and built-in accountability. So people have to know what they're accountable for, and there has to be a way to make them accountable and hold them accountable for their duties. Right now, we're in a situation where there is a huge demand for dental personnel, and the workforce has changed partly mainly due to the pandemic. But in the past 2 years, there's a severe shortage of dental office staff members, most especially dental assistants. They're in very short supply, and also administrative staff as well. There's a shortage of qualified personnel in the industry that results in many dental employees jumping from job to job because they know that they can get more money at another job, they can get better hours. So it's really in their hands right now. And some of them are expecting extraordinarily high salaries, but definitely it doesn't mean if you're paying the higher salaries, it doesn't mean that that's going to be commensurate with their skills and abilities. So that's an important thing to keep in mind. So it's better to keep the good ones, keep the ones that the personnel that you already have at your office that are loyal to your office. And the way to do that is to empower them and to help them to feel that they're part of your success, as well as part of their own success. And that's a key thing to think about, because employees, although you're hiring them to help grow your practice and build your practice, the fact is that they're there for their own future. They're there to look out for their own success, and that's their number one concern. So the best solution is to try to keep the employees that you currently have. And remember, as a dentist, you are the CEO of your company. So you're the head of the human resources. You're in charge of hiring, terminating, and performance reviews as well. Although your employees work for you, they are really interested in their success. And that's a key thing to remember when you're doing performance reviews, that although you would love them to just only contribute to your success, they're looking out for themselves as well. And that's why your feedback is so important to them. They need to know that they're not only meeting expectations, but in some cases exceeding expectations. But there has to be clarity in what your expectations are. You have to be very clear in what you expect them to do. Your employees don't know whether or not they're necessarily doing a good job unless they know what's expected of them. And that can be in the form of performance job descriptions, which I'll talk about in a couple of moments as well. Guidelines and boundaries provide a sense of comfort and security to your employees while encouraging accountability. So it's important that they know what the parameters of their job are, and what they should be doing and what they shouldn't be doing as well. So how do you empower your employees? To empower them is to do 3 actions, basically. Give employees the freedom to get the job done, including a job description. If you have a standard operating policies and procedures manual, that's really important. What I like to do is I like to tie in the job descriptions to the standard operating policies and procedures manual. And how I do that is I will put, for example, if one of the duties is answering the telephone, look on page so-and-so under our telephone policy, our telephone techniques policy, and see how we answer the telephone at this office. So if you tie your standard operating procedures into the actual job descriptions, it helps your employees to understand what's expected of them and also to follow your rules. Because even if they come in with experience, they can also bring a lot of bad habits that they've developed at other offices. They can bring that with them as well. So it's important that once you have your business system set up, that in order to maintain consistency, when you bring in new employees, train them effectively and also give them the time, tools, and training, and that would include giving them the references in your standard operating policies and procedures manual. So give them the right kind of support to get the job done and get it done well, and then create measurable objective targets. This will help to employees to be accountable and to produce the right outcomes as well. Inspire them to want to be part of your journey. So although they're interested, as I mentioned, in their own journey, inspire them to want to be part of your journey and to get some satisfaction from their job at your office. Help them to discover what they can do to create their own path, what they can do that's exceptional or outstanding to create their own path. Have shared vision and shared leadership as well. And then give them the tools and support that they need. If they don't know what's expected of them, then they won't know what to do. So they really need to know exactly what to do. So give them the time to get the work done. Give them the tools to get the work done. So that is the job description. If you have an inventory control policy, you want to give them the policy, and it shows how to control the inventory. And then give them the training. This is usually the missing element, because most dentists hire in crisis mode, especially right now when there's such a shortage of staff. I've had several clients who've said to me, I just need a body. And the fact is that if they get the body and they get the right personality in there, we can train them. You can train people on the dental aspects. You can't train them on personality, and you can't train them necessarily on their work ethic. And you can encourage a good work ethic, but it's not something that is necessarily 100% trainable. But give them the support that they need, and that's through continuous feedback. When I go to offices, I hear from so many staff members who say to me, Sandy, I don't even know if the doctor understands what I do. He or she doesn't know how hard I work, and I'm giving 150%, but they have no idea how hard I'm working. And the fact is that a busy dentist is focused on the patient care. So they may not necessarily be able to pat you on the back every few minutes and to let you know what a good job you're doing. But the fact is that they expect you to be able to perform your job well. And in order to do that, you need to provide them with guidelines. So that's the key thing. Many dentists hire in crisis mode, which is certainly the case right now. So the critical missing element in hiring process can set your employees up for either success or for failure. So unless they're provided with the right time, training, tools, and support. Even if the employee brings years of experience, and I've seen this happen so many times, they can really mess up your systems. I'm just going to give you an example. I was in an office where everyone in the office, everyone that was newly hired, came in with their own experience in a certain dental software. But however, they had workarounds. Each one of them did something differently at their office, and somebody did something differently at their office. The end result was I took the entire office back to the software company, and everybody retrained on the basics. And it's so important that because otherwise you mess up your computer system, and then you can't, if you put garbage in or you have little workarounds, you can't get the information out of your computer system that you need. So it's really important that everybody is on the same page. Everybody knows how you do things at your office. It may be nice that you did things at your other office that way, but this is how we do things at this office. And that will help you to keep your systems consistent and current as well. The investment you make in training your staff will pay off. Your new hires need to be trained on your systems and your software and how you use your software. And I really highly recommend that you use your software the way it was intended, because all dental softwares are intended to be management tools that help you to make your office more efficient. And if they're not being used properly, then you're not able to get the right information out of the system. So that's a key thing as well. Establish your HR infrastructure, which we talked about in the last webinar, and we're certainly talking about tonight as well. This helps to protect your practice legally. It helps to provide clarity to your employees. Compliance with the Employment Standards Act that's in Canada. Every province has the Employment Standards Act, has one version of their own in the US. There are different states have their different employment standards. However, basically all employment standards protect the employees and not necessarily the employer. It also is important to provide fair and equitable hiring when you're hiring new team members for your office. Include employment contracts. That's your one protection. If you have a contract in place when your new employees start, that's going to help you immensely. Your employee policies manual, that outlines all of the day-to-day things, for example, the statutory holidays, how to apply for vacation and things like that, where to park and things like that. Job descriptions help to outline the how you do things at your office. And then finally, performance reviews, which is what we're talking about tonight. So what are employment standards? It's a law that establishes minimum employer obligations and employee rights with respect to rates of pay, hours of work, overtime, vacations, public holidays, and leaves of absence, and more. And the reason I mentioned that every province in Canada has them, and every state in the US would certainly have their own version of employment laws. The important thing is that you need to follow whatever your local employment laws are. Employment labor laws always protect the employee, and so they should. If you're expecting your employees to work overtime, then they need to be paid for overtime hours. So there's lots of things that protect the employee. However, not too much that protects the employer. However, the Employment Standards Act certainly applies to both. But the reason that you need to follow these laws is mostly to protect the employee, to make sure that you are, as the employer, following the rules of your state or province. So why is communication so important, and who has the time when you're busy with treating patients? And I notice now, especially, all of the offices that I'm dealing with are getting extremely busy. Their schedules are full. They are really, really busy. So it's important to make sure that you take the time and give them the proper information about their job. And that really is the path to empowerment of your employees. Employees who feel empowered perform better. And if they're performing better, your practice will grow. As a dentist, you simply don't have the time necessarily to communicate with your expectations, and you can get frustrated if the employee doesn't live up to those expectations. But if the employee's not aware of them, then it's very difficult for the employee to live up to them. So creation of your HR management system that includes role clarity, consistency, and accountability is the key to your success. It's important to do performance reviews annually. It's a critical step in practice growth and practice empowerment. I will tell you something. If your employees, let's say, for example, you had to terminate someone, or if you had to discipline someone, the first thing that the labor board will look at and that they will ask you, and I've had this happen on many occasions, they'll say, can you provide us with your most recent performance reviews? So in other words, if you don't have a performance review, the employee can say, I didn't know I was doing anything wrong. You know, the doctor, in fact, gave me a raise. You could be doing across the board salary increases, or cost of living salary increases, but that doesn't always work in your favor, because the employee can say, I had no idea I was doing a bad job. The employer never spoke to me. They never told me I was doing anything wrong, and then I was let go. So, and that employee, if they go to an employment lawyer, will win. They'll win that case because of the fact that you have not given the employee an opportunity to improve. And that's really a key thing too. If somebody needs to improve their performance, you need to have a written plan on how they need to improve their performance. And your employees need the feedback. They don't have an opportunity to receive feedback necessarily during the day, week, or month, whatever. And it's a must in any long-term relationship. I hear a lot of feedback sometimes, and they'll say, oh, my staff are like my family, and then they'll have one of their family members do something really not good in their office, and they have to discipline that family member. So it's really important that that you maintain some kind of open relationship, but certainly one that is document as much as you possibly can. Have the documentation. It's just like in the chart. If it's not in the chart, it didn't happen. Think of that. Think of your HR system the same way. If you haven't documented it, it didn't happen. I've had many clients who've said to me, they've told me about an incident or whatever, and I asked them, did you write it down, the date, time, everything that happened, anybody who witnessed this? And oh, no, I didn't. So if you don't write it down, then it didn't happen. So it's very important to make sure that everything is documented and kept up to date. And this will always also give you something to discuss during their performance review as well. Many dentists don't necessarily know how to do performance reviews. Some do them very, very well. However, this webinar is to help guide you through the process. Basically, there are 3 types of feedback that your employees need: appreciation, coaching, and evaluation. Every employee needs all 3. And appreciation can be as simple as at your morning meeting, saying something positive to your team members, getting them started. I worked with a dentist years ago who, at his morning meeting, we were obliged to either say something inspirational or tell a joke. But anyway, the whole point behind that was after we went through the day and we had a clear view of where we were going with that day, then it was like giving each other a high five and go team. And this is, we're going to have a good day today. And it always starts your day off on a positive note. Appreciation communicates not just the value of the work, but the person who does it. And that's really the key thing. It can be as simple as saying, thank you, you did a good job today. And it can be as simple as that. I know one dentist who was a client of mine, he would say, please and thank you for every instrument transfer. It got to be a little bit much, but at the end of the day, he always said, thank you, ladies, you did a great job today. And he's saying, I appreciate you. Coaching helps the person to adapt and improve and learn your systems. So when they're being coached by your office manager or by a trainer, that will help them to learn the way you do things at your office. And then finally, there we go. Evaluation helps the person to know where they stand with expectations and what to expect in the future, because that's really what you're going to be focusing on during your performance review, is the future. Even though you are evaluating the past performance, you really want to focus on the future. Each employee follows the employee policies and procedures as outlined in the employee policy manual, and that's what I mentioned earlier. So the way I do it is I will give each employee a standard job description. I'll tell them to cross out anything that they don't do, add in anything that they do, and then bring it back to me. And I will put together their customized job description. And included with the customized job description will be refer to your standard operating policies and procedures page such and such. So if it's appointment scheduling, refer to the appointment scheduling policy. If it's accounts receivable, refer to our accounts receivable policy page so-and-so of the standard operating policies and procedures. Evaluations should be done annually, at least annually. Some dentists that I know will do them more often, and that's absolutely fine. You can do them as often as you like. But I find it works better if you're doing them all at the same time and you do them once a year. And the reason for this is because if you go by anniversary date, that used to be the traditional way of doing it. If you go by their anniversary date and you've got a large team, you're going to be doing performance reviews every month. So it's better to pick a time of year. I always think it's really good to do it just when you have your budget ready for the following year. That's a key thing as well, because you have to know if you are going to be awarding merit increases that you have the money in your budget to award. You can't give the money you don't have. So it's very important to tie this in with your annual budget as well. And once your budget is done, then set the performance reviews, and then you know how much money you've got to work with. So it's important that self-direction and personal development are encouraged, which they are, because most dental teams are self-directed teams. They are professionals that come in with their skill set and they contribute to your success. However, they're basically self-directed as well. Each fiscal year, every employee will be asked to attend a formal performance review. And you can put this right in your policy manual, which I recommend, and that's the way I usually do it. And let them know what time of year. So if you're doing your budget based on calendar year, and you're doing it, let's say in October or November, then you might want to do the performance reviews at the beginning of the following year. And performance reviews don't necessarily mean that your employee is getting a raise. And that's something that is an expectation of employees. They generally think if they're getting a performance review, they're working hard. Remember, they think that they're working hard and they're doing a great job. So they deserve a salary increase. And who's not going to want a salary increase? But that doesn't mean that it will be given. It needs to be based on merit of performance. And you can actually run into difficulty if you raise somebody's salary and they're not performing well, a non-performer. So, and I'm going to explain that in just a second. Pay increases will only be awarded when the employee meets and or exceeds the performance statements as outlined in their job description. And that's why you need to tie in the job description with their performance reviews. Pay increases will be based on merit of performance. This is a really key point. This is very important to remember and decided upon by the doctor. So the doctor has full say. Remember, you're the CEO of your company. So you have full say of how much you're going to be awarding in terms of a merit-based increase. It's not just giving everybody a salary increase or thinking that you give them $1 per year. I will tell you, I had a client who was giving his staff, every time he would do performance reviews, he would give them, all of them, $1 an hour increase. It got to the point he had some hygienists there who were not performing very well, and they were making $55 per hour. And so, you know, there's got to be a limit at some point, and I'll talk about how you can decide on that as well. Employees often think that they're entitled to a pay increase. Now, I've been told this by employees. They said, well, it's in the Employment Standards Act. They have to give me an increase every year. No, they don't. First of all, it's based on merit of performance. You know, and in Ontario, we had a legislation at one point that would prohibit you from people doing the same job, equal job for equal pay, something like that. Anyway, if they were doing the same job, they had to be paid the same. But what about if you had a dental assistant, for example, who had been with you for 10 years, and she's making a little bit more than the newbie coming in, the new person coming in, then as long as you have performance-based merit increases, then you'll be fine. So I haven't heard much more about that legislation. I don't know if it still is in effect, but the fact is that you can get around a lot of legal hassles as long as you do performance reviews and you base salary increases on merit of performance. That's really important to remember. So employees it's not true. You're not obliged to give them a merit increase each year. Cost of living is a different story. Until recently, our inflation rate was so low that it didn't make any difference. That might be changing in the near future. However, what I've been doing with some of my clients is we're putting performance reviews in place now. And that way, the one client in particular can increase the salaries for some of the high performing employees that have been with him for a long time. And then when he has new people coming in, they're not going to necessarily be making more than the loyal employees who've been there for 15 years. So you only need to comply with the minimum standards according to your state laws, employment laws, or the Employment Standards Act. Pay increases must be based on the merit of each individual's performance. And the labor board, if you had to discipline somebody or you had to terminate somebody, will ask for these. They'll ask for this documentation. If an employee is eligible for a pay increase, it would not go into effect until the employee has worked there for a full year and has had no interruption of earnings. So for example, if they didn't go on maternity leave during that first year of employment or something to that effect, even though maternity leaves are quite lengthy now. Wage adjustments will be based on merit of each individual's performance, and raises, if applicable, will be given once annually. So you can specify when that's going to be. So let's say, for example, if you're doing your performance reviews in January, you might want to do the pay increases in March. And that way you've budgeted for them, you know what's happening, you know how much that you're allotting, because you don't want your staff costs to go too high. Your staff costs should be 25% of your overall production. And if they go higher than that, then there's a problem, but it's usually because the schedule isn't full. It's not necessarily that you're overpaying your staff, it's that they aren't producing what they should be and that your schedule is not full. The first place I look when I see the salaries higher than expected is I will look at the schedule, and I guarantee there are openings in the schedule. So the employees are certainly entitled to have pay increases now and then, but also your practice has to be performing well enough in order to provide that as well. So should an employee not meet expectations of their role, opportunities for improvement should be discussed with them, and the individual will be provided with the time frame in which to display visible and consistent improvement. Now this is, you can do it in the form of a written document, and it could be called a performance improvement plan. So if you have a performance improvement plan, what it will do is it will outline specifically what the employee needs to improve. And you have to be very specific and very detailed in this. Also, a date, give them a specific date on when you expect to see those improvements and what will show you visible improvement. So if you have to give an employee performance improvement plan, it will also protect you legally, because it does say in there that if you do not show visible signs of improvement in these specific areas, it could lead to termination of your employment. So you've got everything in there, and you've guided the employee. But the key thing is, you've told them that they're doing something that is not meeting your expectations, and you gave them an opportunity to improve. The labor board looks really kindly on this. So as long as you've given them an opportunity, and if they still are not performing well, then you can go ahead and terminate. But remember, documentation is the key. Keeping full documentation is really important. The employee will be given written guidelines to follow, and the progress should be closely monitored during this time. So if you have an office manager that's working with you, your office manager should be monitoring that employee, providing as much support as possible that she may need. For example, that person might need some more training on your computer software. They might need to attend a webinar, an educational webinar or something like that. So you determine what type of support you're going to provide, and you would include that in the performance improvement plan. And no pay adjustments will occur during this time, because remember, you're saying they're not performing according to the standards that you want. And so you wouldn't give them a pay increase at that time, only after they have done. And if they have improved, then what I would suggest also is that you do not, it's not retroactive if you do decide to increase their pay. So how to do the performance reviews? This is a way that I suggest that works well with my clients. Set a date where you're going to do everybody's the same day. That way, everybody knows that they're going to be expecting this. I usually set a schedule. You're coming in at 9:30, you're coming in at 10:30, or whatever. So set a schedule, set up the time for each person. I usually provide 45 minutes to an hour. And the reason I do that is it depends on the individual. The most of the performance reviews that I've been involved with take a half an hour. However, you do need to provide the time to listen to the employee and to be able to talk to the employee and to help them and coach them. 2 or 3 days before the review, you give the employees a self-assessment. Now, I've provided all of this documentation as part of your handouts for this evening, and I'm going to walk you through the self-assessment and show you how and why the questions have been set up like this. This allows your employee the time to reflect on their own performance, as well as what their contributions to your office are. So remember, employees are focused on what's in it for me. They're focused on themselves. They're not necessarily focused on what am I contributing to this office. So that's the type of thing that you want to turn their mindset around a little bit, so they can talk about what their accomplishments are, what their contributions are, and that way as their employer exactly how they're performing and what they're doing. So it gives them time to reflect on their own performance, and the review itself should be a positive experience for both parties. It should not be a negative experience. However, if you have to include corrective behavior, you need to do so now. I have to tell you, I was with a client one time. He's such a nice person, and every person that came in, and there were some ladies that needed specific performance improvement for sure. And he would bring them in and say, "You're doing a great job." And he said that to every single one. So I had to ask him to stop doing it, because if you're giving somebody corrective behavior, or if you're trying to correct someone's behavior, you don't say you're doing a great job. You start with something positive. I really appreciate the time that you spend. You're dedicated. You're always on time. You're very rarely absent from work. And start off with positive. Put the correction in the middle. I would like to see if you could spend a little bit more time on being more careful with the billings, or, whatever the corrective behavior is, put that in the middle, end it on a positive note. So always end it on a positive. And, I really appreciate your dedication and loyalty to this practice and that kind of thing. So it's called the sandwich method. So positive, corrective, and then end with positive. Have the employees read these answers to their self-assessment out loud. So listen very carefully to what the employees are saying to you and how they answer the questions, and that helps to set the tone for the meeting. But stay objective and focused on individual results. Discuss any issues and blockages that the employee may have, and this is a really key point because they may not, for example, be able to meet your expectations because of a blockage. And I'll just give you one example. If somebody, your lead assistant, is in charge of ordering supplies, and you expect that person to stay within 5% of the budget. I experienced this one time with an office, and it taught me something. I asked a dental assistant if she could stay within 5% of the budget, and she said, no. You're from the Toronto area. You have no idea what this doctor likes, and I'm going to order what he wants, period. And so I thought, you know what? She gave me a valuable lesson there because I wasn't giving her context and meaning to what I was saying. 5% of what? So I tracked this lady and I said, oh, do you think you could stay within, you usually spend around $5,000 a month. Can you stay around that? No, well, I don't know. It depends on the doctor. I just go with what he wants me to order. So I tracked her for over 6 months and she came in at 4.5%. What that taught me was I wasn't giving her anything specific. I wasn't giving her context and meaning. I was just telling her this abstract number to try to reach that target. So when you're setting targets with your staff, you really need to be specific with them and give them context and meaning behind what it is that you expect from them. And then be very specific when you're giving the feedback, both positive and negative. So especially the negative, if you have to give that, then you need to be very specific. Although you're reviewing their past performance, because that's all you have to work with, you can't tell the future. Help your employees to realize that their own potential and help to realize their own potential and set their own path. So you really want to focus on their future performance, how they're going to be performing this year. The process is that the employee will be provided with the self-evaluation. This helps you to understand the perspective of the employee and also understand any of their issues and blockages. All employees should believe that they are giving 100%, which they do. They often tell me that they're giving more than 100%, and that the employer should know that and recognize it. And when they recognize it, it's usually financial. Many employees do not feel appreciated and may think that the employer doesn't realize how hard they work. And that's partly because you're working hard treating patients. So there are certain expectations that you have of your employees. You expect them to do their job as set out in their job description. A self-evaluation helps the employee to have a voice with his or her employer. Remember, you don't often get an opportunity to sit with your employer, but now you've got dedicated time, focused time, once per year. You're prepared with your questions, you're prepared with your self-evaluation, and now you've got your employees have something that they can talk to the employer about. And sometimes there are some really fabulous suggestions that come out of these performance reviews, because your employees really know what's going on in the practice while you are treating your patients. So here's an example of a self-evaluation. Basically, it says the purpose of a performance evaluation is to evaluate your performance results and compare them to mutually agreed goals that we set. To prepare you for our meeting, to help you crystallize your thinking, complete this worksheet. Based on what you achieved this year, in what areas do you feel that you were very strong? And where do you think you could improve? What new or improved skills would help you in the coming year? What issues or blockages challenged you during the past year? What, if any, blockages must you overcome to achieve the goals this year, your goals this year? Describe your personal development plans for the coming year? That's an interesting question because I actually had an employee who said, well, they're personal. So she didn't want to answer the question. But there's a reason for that. You want to know what the employee is thinking of their own personal plan. And remember, it's what's in it for me. I want to improve myself. I want to enjoy my career. Do you require employer support to achieve your goals? If yes, describe the type of support that would be most helpful to you. Do you have any constructive comments or suggestions that would help improve the quality of the service that we deliver? So these questions are really focused on the individual, but they're also focused on each individual's contribution to the practice. Describe your long-term professional goals. So they're really good questions. The performance evaluation process is the basic responsibility of good management. It's very important that this is done at least annually. It may be something you're not comfortable with. However, using this system might make you a little bit more comfortable because this system is very objective. So there's some subjective information in there, but mostly it's objective and it's pertaining directly to what their performance, their job descriptions. So you are evaluating them on their actual performance of what they do. Of course, it's not easy to play judge and jury over someone else's work. And employees may feel that you don't know how hard they work, and I've already mentioned that, or what they actually do. The employees may also feel that the evaluation is too subjective and based on whether or not you like them and whether or not you're in a good mood. And you wouldn't believe how many times I've heard that from employees when we're doing performance reviews. They say, is she in a good mood today, or is he in a good mood today? Because they think that their performance review will be based on that person's mood. So balancing subjective and objective data provides a fair evaluation. So to make the evaluation process even more objective, start with reviewing their job description. And that's a really good idea to have a look at their job descriptions every year when you're starting this entire process, because some jobs evolve and they could be doing more responsibilities that are not reflected in their job description. So it's a good idea to do this on an annual basis and to relook at their job description as well. The job description will form the basis of the performance review, and that's really the key thing. So they should be written or prepared by the employee. As I mentioned earlier, I prepare standard job descriptions, you know, what a dental assistant should be doing. They cross out anything that they don't do. They add in anything that they do on top of it. So the standard operating job descriptions really should be part of your operating policies and procedures as well. So if you are replacing someone in your practice, it's very important to make sure that that you have a specific job description that will reflect exactly what that person that is being replaced was doing. So for example, if the employee's responsibility is to schedule appointments, there should be reference to the policy that relates to how we schedule appointments at this office. You should retain the customized job descriptions for each person and maintain a copy in your employee's file. You should always have up-to-date job descriptions and up-to-date personnel files ready in case there was obviously an inspection by the labor board too. That could happen. When the employees have put together their customized job description, as I mentioned, I actually take that job description and I literally cut and paste it into this performance review profile. So I do that because now it shows the employee that you are actually evaluating them on what they actually do, and they contributed to this process by helping to create their own job descriptions, by customizing their job descriptions. Some usual information up here, reliability, that's according to their attendance, punctuality, ability to focus, ability to follow instruction, ability to meet deadlines. I've identified these in the areas of growth area, good, very good, or excellent. So it depends on if they've been reliable and punctual and all of that. Now you can change this numbering system to whatever type of rating system that you like, but I'm just giving you an outline of how this could work. So if somebody is seriously below expectations, they would get a 0 in this column. And that means that you need to be prepared to talk to them about that. That would be the correction that you want to make. Does not meet expectations or meets expectations, and so on and so forth. And your superstar would be exceeding all expectations. Their personal qualities, once again, identified in growth area, good, very good, or excellent. You know, are they cooperative? If they have good decision-making skills, deal with conflict constructively, contributes to a positive tone in the workplace, and so on and so forth. Their communication skills, these are a little bit more subjective, but that's where they're built into, or they're broken down into growth area, good and very good. Please be sure if you have anything in the growth area, then be prepared with comments. So be prepared with being able to, because your employee will ask you to explain what you mean. So just be ready for that. If you need to set any goals with the employee for the coming year, then put in what the goals might be. So the goal, for example, might be to have further training on the computer software that you're working with. What's an indicator of success? Fewer mistakes. Plan of action, and then what the plan of action. So you would set up the computer training and by the date, you know, make it more specific as well. And then and that next area is the plan of action. When is their next review? And have your employees sign this. Now, you've signed it and your employee will sign it, and then you've photocopy a copy. You keep the original, photocopy a copy, and give it to the employee so they can take it with them. This is a really important point. Do not reward poor performance. This is a key thing. A dentist can run into legal complications if he or she rewards a poorly performing employee. And then if you had to terminate that employee for any reason, they again can go to an employer and say, my boss never told me I was doing anything wrong. I never got any feedback from my boss, and I thought I was doing a really good job because I work really, really hard. And that employment lawyer, they'll win the case for the employee. If you don't have any documentation that you have given the employee any kind of guidance or any opportunity to improve their skills. So that's a key thing. That's another very, very valid reason that you should be doing performance reviews at least annually, because then they can sue you for wrongful dismissal. So the employment lawyer or the labor board may ask to see the performance reviews, and I have witnessed this and experienced this with different offices that I've worked with. When somebody's been terminated and then they're fighting the termination, then the labor board will say, show us the performance reviews. Let's see what you have documented. So that's a key thing. If there's no evidence of a review, it didn't happen. Remember, it's just like writing in your chart or recording in your chart. If it's not in the chart, it didn't happen. And also, here's a big thing too, you're condoning their behavior if you allow them to keep going and doing this. And so if they're doing something wrong and you have made no effort to correct that behavior, then you're saying basically you're doing good, you're doing a great job. That's why I stopped that doctor in saying you're doing a great job, because sometimes they weren't doing a great job. Labor laws, as I mentioned earlier, always side with the employee. Are employers obliged to provide annual pay increases? Absolutely not. Employees think that they're entitled to pay increases, and I've heard this from employees all the time, and that you're obliged by law. You have to give me a pay increase. The only thing in our area that you are obliged to by law, if an employee has worked over 5 years in certain jurisdictions, then they have to get a 3 weeks vacation or 6%. But other than that, you're not obliged to anything. Employers are not obliged to provide pay increases beyond the minimum standards under the provincial labor laws or the state labor laws. Who decides the amount of the increase? To provide fair and equitable practices, pay increases must be based on merit of performance, as I mentioned earlier. The practice needs to be doing well financially as well. That's why I always tie in performance reviews with the budget. So if you're doing the budget, you know, for the fiscal year, according to your fiscal year, then that's when you will also want to do your pay increase, your performance reviews. If an employee is eligible for a pay increase, it will not go into effect until the employees worked at the practice for a full year. And wage adjustments must be provided annually based on the person's performance as well as the practice performance. So what should your staff costs be and how much should you provide for pay increases? The average practice should be growing in a rate of 8 to 10% per year growth or more. Now, I realize that with the pandemic, most people are in recovery mode right now, so that might be a little bit lower right now, but that's certainly a target that you want to achieve each year. You want to be growing your practice each year. This would include an increase in production and collections, as we have to have stable and predictable expenses in order to have a viable business. As a benchmark for your practice, your staff costs should not exceed 25% of the overall monthly production. What control does your team have over your practice success? They have all kinds of control. The administrative team has direct control over the effectiveness of your schedule. Remember, that's the most important thing, including your hygiene schedules. They also control your collections. They collect the money at the time of service. If they are performing well and keeping the schedule full and collecting money at the time of service, your revenue will automatically grow. Your hygiene production, your hygiene team should be billing a minimum of $180 to $200 per booked hour. If there are openings in the schedule, that will reduce their hourly billing. Hygiene salaries can, of course, range depending on the amount of experience and location of your practice. But here, a general rule of thumb is that your hygienist should be producing approximately 5 times what their hourly rate of pay is. So, for example, the hygienist that I was telling you that was making $55 an hour, and I've heard of some making $60 per hour. If they're making $60 per hour, then they would have to be billing $300 per hour, per booked hour. And it's unlikely that it would go that high. It's possible, but it's I wouldn't recommend it, because then the reputation gets out that it's very expensive at your office. So I don't recommend it. Another important metric is to pay attention to the supplies. Your sundry supplies should be running at 5% of your production or your collections. Most of my offices that I work with run on 5% of their collections. The clinical assistants have total control over this when they're ordering and maintaining good inventory control methods. A good clinical assistant can also help to either increase your productivity or decrease the efficiency of the doctor. So those are important things to keep in mind. Lab expenses are also really good indicators of the type of dentistry that's being produced. They should be approximately 10% of your production. And they're a good indicator of whether or not you're performing higher end dental services, such as crowns, bridges, implants, etc. If lab expenses are lower, it could indicate that you are doing bread and butter services of dentistry. So you're doing fillings and doing great dental services, but they're not as high end as you would like them to be. This could be improved by examining your treatment planning process. So in your case presentations. So all of these things all together give a good indication of who should be doing what, like what the activities of your team should be in order to make these numbers improve and to keep your practice running efficiently and effectively. The admin team plays a large role in following up with the treatment plans too. Insurance claims, I know when you send out insurance claims, if they'll take approximately a month to give an answer to the patient. So it's important that treatment coordinators follow up with it, or admin team follows up with it. I've also, in your handout tonight, I provided you with some wage increase guidelines. I'm just going to walk you through briefly. Annual increases, I mentioned earlier, are not the right of your employee. If your practice is doing well financially, then you can grant merit-based increases. So you may wish to grant increases based on the following. If no increase if an employee's performance is not up to acceptable standards. So remember, do not reward a non-performing employee. The employee should be advised that there are gaps in his or her in performance and how they can make improvements. So be very specific in that. You may wish to help the employee set goals and timelines for their performance improvement. Once these goals have been met, a wage increase may be granted as of the improvement review date, However, backdating increases never should be considered. 3 to 4% increase, and these numbers are strictly, they're flexible, so you can decide on what you think is the appropriate number, and again, based on your budget. 3 to 4% increase may be given if an employee's performance is usually up to expected standards. There may be minor inconsistencies once in a while. Everyone makes a mistake here and there. But these have typically been addressed through discussion with the employee, and they're not serious enough to warrant formal goal setting. So the adjustment would provide for a cost of living increase. So that's usually the cost of living would land in that area. If you have a superstar, if an employee's performance consistently meets expected standards, the employee shows him or herself willing to and ready to fill in and help whenever necessary, you may want to give them a 5% increase. That is usually only for top performers. If an employee has reached the top of their pay range for your area, for example, the $60 an hour hygienist or $55 an hour hygienist, you may wish to provide a one-time bonus to reward them, tell them they're doing a great job, you really appreciate their service. However, you need to give them some type of incentive to keep going and keep maintaining that, but you don't want to keep increasing their salary because there's no end to it, there's no stop. So this is the sample that I have given you in your handout tonight, and this explains everything. So I just want to explain this top line here. So if you've hired someone at below the minimum range for your area, because it's, the ranges of salaries are demographic, so it depends on what your demographic area is, and you've hired them below and you've got the superstar employee, you might want to give them a 10% increase. If they are meeting some expectations or meeting most goals and expectations, you might want to give them 2%. If they're meeting some or they're on a performance warning, you give them nothing. You do not increase their salary. If they're a new employee for the first year, after the first year, you might want to bring them up to the minimum wage for that, the minimum rate for that area. And it just continues on. So the higher, if you hired somebody 100%, say they're a $40 an hour hygienist, for example, then you might want to give them a little bit less. And again, these numbers are flexible. The handouts that I gave you are saved in Word, so they're easy to fix as well. So in summary, a human resource infrastructure has measurable performance objectives, role clarity, and consistent performance feedback to help your employees feel valued and connected to you and the team. Linking individual performance goals and achievements will help to align each team member's performance to the overall goals of the practice. Striking a balance between being involved with your team members enough so they feel your direction and support can easily be maintained by conducting annual performance reviews. Remember that employees want to be treated as people first and workers second. Remember, happy employees affect your bottom line.